veterans of the Valley. Since 1862, First National has provided local decision-making and accessibility, as well as banking products and services to Brazos Valley citizens.
Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbeville. Last week we introduced you to College Station's Colonel Ken Loveless, a helicopter pilot with 2 tours of Vietnam, following a tour of Korea, and then later overseas again. Like the cat with 9 lives, Ken Loveless turned back death time and time again during his service, and we are very glad he is still here to tell us his story. Welcome back to Veterans of the Valley, Ken Loveless. At least 9 times that you've survived crashes.
Well, not all crashes.
Not all crashes.
9 times having to leave the sky against my will.
Right.
Some of them were
not your normal landing, right?
Normally you were able to make it, but
I think 5 of those in choppers. Your flying career almost never got started. I want you to talk about what happened in 1961 at Fort Walters in Mineral Wells. We have some pictures of it later, but you describe what happened that day.
well, as a student at Fort Walters, Texas, we would in the mornings or afternoon, depending if you were flying the morning or you had 2 flying periods each day, they would put a tail number on a chalkboard and next to your name, and that's the aircraft that you would go out and find, and that's the one you would fly that day. I had already soloed, so that particular morning, it was a cold morning, clear blue sky, and I finally got a tail number behind my name, and off to the flight line I went. I found the aircraft, and it was a beautiful thing. It was the cleanest one I guess I'd ever seen. In fact, I was amazed at how nice it was. And I pre-flighted, got in, cranked it up, hovered out to the takeoff pad, requested takeoff, and took off. Well, we have something in the helicopter business called the dead man's curve. Mm-hmm. If you're over 15 feet and up to about 200 feet and your engine quits, you normally don't survive. The airplane is going to crash. Now what happens to you, of course, is another story. But that's exactly what happened. I was climbing out. I had maximum takeoff manifold, the power, and had the nose tipped over just forward a bit to get a good gradual climb. And the engine blew up. 2 rod end bearings, and the two pistons sounded like a bomb to me, but I only had a few seconds to get to the ground, before I was to the ground. I had time to get out a couple of maydays. I don't know why I did that, but it came to me. And I leveled the aircraft for landing, and was just starting to pull the nose up into a flare so I could cushion the aircraft on the ground, pulling some pitch to the blades, and all of a sudden my beautiful picture turned into solid brown. It was dirt. So it went from half ground and sky to nothing but brown. And of course I went into the ground nose first. I released myself. The aircraft ended up on the right side, and it had beat itself to death on the ground. But I was laying on the right door, looking up through the left door, beautiful clear blue sky, and trying to get my bearings. I saw my wallet that had come out of my flight suit. I got my wallet. I got a seat cushion, and I was in my helmet. And I was going to crawl out the front of what was left of the bubble, which was a plexiglass type bubble, and there was a hole in it. But when I tried to get out, I was paralyzed, and I could move my arms and hands, but I couldn't move my trunk or my legs. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still laying up with my legs up above me. And I heard a crackling, and then smoke started coming in. So I knew it was on fire. Of course, I had a full load of fuel when I took off. So on impact, the fuel cell ruptured.
Right.
And it was just a matter of seconds before it started burning. And I could not get out. I tried several times to get out, and I couldn't. I laid back on my back and just said, well, I guess this is it. It's all over. And I was just looking at the sky and the smoke coming into the cockpit area. And I heard a voice say, we got to get out of here, it's going to explode. And I turned around, and there was a man coming in the front. He grabbed me and pulled me out through the hole in the plexiglass, pulled me out, dragged me out about 10 yards or so. He actually stuck his head under my arm, and I was dead weight. Mm-hmm. So he was carrying all of my weight. And we both fell down. He fell, we both went down, and we were on the ground when the helicopter did explode and burned up. And I guess we'll see a picture of that one. But anyway, I was obviously happy to get away, but another helicopter came in, a medical evac helicopter. In fact, it was the same type of helicopter I was flying, except it had a litter pod on each side, from cross tube, landing gear, cross tube, front cross tube, back to the back. And they put me on that thing, looking straight up into the rotor system, and that's how they flew me to the hospital. Yes. That was more frightening than what I had been through. It was a crash.
I guess so. And of all the times that you had these emergencies, that's really the only one that you didn't walk away from. You were laid up for about 6 weeks with a broken back.
Yeah, broken back, leg, and teeth.
Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about another one. You were one of about 9 in a Huey. You weren't the pilot, that the pilot had flown into a thunderstorm. Talk about that and what happened to the pilot and what you did to manage that situation.
In Vietnam, when a person wanted to go someplace or go to another area of Vietnam, you could drop into any Army heliport or an Air Force base and get your name on the list, and they would, first time something was going in that direction, you would go out and get on the aircraft, and that was your means of transportation. This particular afternoon, I was waiting to catch a ride down to a place called Sac Trang, which was, again, down in the lower part of Vietnam in the Mekong Delta area, which was going to be my parent headquarters when I took command of the assault helicopter company. So that would be where my boss was actually, had his office. And I caught a ride with some guys. There were about 9 of us that caught rides that day that were in the helicopter. It had a crew of 4, pilot, co-pilot, or aircraft commander, pilot, door gunners, 2 on each side. And we took off late in the evening. It was dark and headed south. And I got to talking to the guy next to me. And in a helicopter, you don't talk normally, you just holler in order to be heard. And he had been an aviator at one time, because I was asking what unit he was assigned to. I saw his wings, and he said, no, he was grounded, medically grounded, which means he can't fly anymore. And he was a fixed-wing pilot, not a helicopter pilot. But we were passing comments back and forth when the pilot flew into a squall line. That's a rolling type of a frontal system. And this, at night, was laced with lightning and heavy, heavy rain. When it rains in Vietnam, you can't believe how heavy it rains. You think it rains here, it doesn't rain here compared to Vietnam, especially during the monsoon season. Well, he flew in, and the corrective action for a pilot when you enter a squall line or any thunderstorm, you do a 180-degree turn and fly back out and go somewhere else. He did what he was supposed to do, and I was very proud of him. I didn't know his name or who he was assigned to, but I said, man's been taught to do the right thing. But he turned around again and went and tried to penetrate the squall line. And now you're under IFR instrument flying on the instruments, on the gauges, and you can't see, and you've got heavy rain, strong winds, and lightning. Well, I was watching the co-pilots. I could see from where I was sitting, I could see his artificial horizon, his turning bank, his altitude indicator, and the aircraft was getting slow. It was going too slow. And I hollered to the fellow next to me. He said, "Ken, are you an instrument pilot?" And I said, "Yeah." And if I ever see that airspeed indicator go to 0, I'm going to take over this thing. Well, it did. It went to, and we were, from what I could tell when I got up there, we were going backwards, 0 airspeed backwards, and on the right side, like this, just falling out of the sky. And the aircraft was doing all kinds of gyrations, and I really thought we'd probably break apart in the air. So I grabbed the helmet from the crew chief, who was right behind me, and I got up to between the pilot and the co-pilot. We have a console. And on the console are radios. There's a map case back in the back, and different control buttons and whatever. And I threw myself across on top of that console, and I ripped my leg and my pants in the process. And I was trying to talk to the guy. I plugged into the co-pilot's. He was frozen. He was just sitting like this. He wouldn't move. I later learned he'd only been in country for 2 weeks, so he didn't know what he should do or not do. But the pilot was what we call washing out the cockpit. He was moving the collective. That's what makes you go forward, back, side, and do all your turns. He was just doing like that. Well, when you do that, the rotor system is here, and you're just washing through what you're supposed to be, air. You're not making any forward speed, so we're just falling through the sky. And I tried to get him using methods of instruction. Talk to him real calm. And I tell him pull in, climb, take off power. This was a turbine type helicopter. Take off power, pull in correct manifold pressure, torque power, and push the cyclic stick over to get airspeed. But he wouldn't do it. He just kept wiping out. So I hit him in the face as hard as I could hit him. And he turned loose of the controls. And I was able just to I'm laying on my stomach, but I could reach the cyclic, and the collective was here. And so I rolled on cruise power, takeoff power. Actually, I pulled in maximum power, torque, and pushed the cyclic over, and and it finally it leveled off and started to move, and we got airspeed and we started climbing. We fell from better than 2,000 feet down to 200 feet because the altimeter was on 200. You couldn't see outside; it was pitch black,
Right.
and in the rain. But the altimeter was the only thing that told me how close we were to the ground. We were about 200 feet, and that is 200 feet if the pilot had properly entered the right altitude when he left
Right.
at the takeoff point.
Right.
So that was not any fun.
No, but you landed it laying across the control panels after you had stunned the pilot.
I got it flying, and,
Right.
when we broke out of the storm, we crossed the river, and I knew what river it was. It was
Right.
moonlit back there.
Right.
I asked him if he felt he could fly, and he said, yeah. So I gave it to him,
I see.
and he flew it on to, not to Sauk
Wow.
Train. We went to an alternate place to land.
Exactly. I want to go to some pictures now that Colonel Loveless has loaned to us to show right now. So let's go to some pictures. This is your crew, and I guess you're down, crouched down in the middle, right?
Kneeling
Kneeling
in the
middle.
center, yeah.
And this is your Vietnam crew, is that right?
This was the gun outfit, the Razorback,
Razorback,
that
right.
I was in on my first tour to Vietnam.
I
I
see.
was a captain then.
I see.
And
Fine-looking soldiers there.
good folk.
We showed a print similar to this on our last show. This is another one that hangs in your home. Just sort of a depiction.
B model gunship,
Right.
Razorbacks. See the
Gunship.
red pig painted on the door,
Exactly.
and that's what it looked like at night.
Wow. Okay. We'll move on. Now, you told the story about this is what your chopper looked like after the crash in Mineral Wells at Fort Walters. This is what you were pulled out of.
That's right. And I don't know if you can see it, but there is a wire system running, a high tension wire running across,
Mm-hmm.
and they say that's what my pogo stick on the back of the H-23 struck, and that's what tipped my nose over, maybe go into the ground nose first rather than on a level.
Well, you look at that and you're just amazed at how you were able to survive that, and very fortunate that the flight instructor came in and got you. And I think we've got a picture of him coming up. That's him right now. This was in a magazine article. Edward Blondell is his name, and this is the soldier that saved your life.
Yeah, he was actually a Southern Airways pilot. They were on contract to provide instructor pilots for the Army. So he used to be an Air Force guy.
I see.
He was in Air Force, and he got out and he went to work with Southern Airways as a flight instructor.
There's you, and talk about this picture.
This was when I was in primary helicopter training at Mineral Wells, and I was a second lieutenant, what we called butter bars, and
Right.
second lieutenant, and that's my oldest son, dressed up and fixed up in fatigues and combat boots, just like I wore.
Proud of his dad. Yeah. And this has nothing to do with your military career, but this is one of your hobbies, and I just wanted to put a picture of your Corvette in the. This is in your garage, and you're proud of these wheels, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got almost. It's a 1978 Indy pace car, Indianapolis pace car, and I've got about almost 9,000 actual miles on it now. So it's not driven very hard.
No, I'll bet. I'll bet. There's a lot of other incidents that we could talk to you about. I want you to describe one more. This was in Vietnam, a landing zone that you thought was cold. It turned out to be hot, and you actually had to fly out with zero oil pressure. Talk about that.
What happened there? I had a light fire team out, and we were in what's in Vietnam we called them the pineapple fields, and we were hitting targets of opportunity with rockets, and an Air Force Forward Air Controller saw us working that area and called us and asked us if we would come over to where another unit and some American soldiers were in a combat assault. And it had gone wrong. Evidently, the enemy was well entrenched, waiting for them when they got there. And he called me and asked me if I could come over and need some help. So I said, sure, we'll be right there. And so we flew. I could see the black smoke. And 5 aircraft were burning, actually. 5 helicopters, our helicopters. And there was another helicopter that had been called in to resupply the troops that were pinned down in this landing zone. He wasn't one of my helicopters or from the outfit we were in, or I never heard of him before, but I kept trying to tell him to wait. If he would wait, what we normally do when we do a supply or go into an LZ that's hot, we put a gunship on each side and start laying down rockets so the enemy will stay down and the aircraft can get on or off. Well, in this particular case, he didn't stop. He didn't wait for us to accompany him in. And he flew on in and got right to the ground, and the aircraft with an explosion just went upside down. And I was hollering at him the whole time not to go in there, but he did anyway. And I didn't see anybody come out of the aircraft. Well, I knew the aircraft was going to burn. There's 5 already burning. If it's sitting there and they hit the fuel, it's going to burn. But I didn't see any of the 4 guys get out. There should have been a pilot, co-pilot, crew chief, and a door gunner. Mm-hmm. And so I went in to try to find out where they were. Were they dead? Or were they, could they get out? Or what the problem was? Got right down and started looking into the wreckage. And about that time I looked out my door. Now we had 48 rockets on board. We had 24 pod on each side. And I saw this American soldier laying on his stomach, pointing like that. Mm-hmm. So as I turned around and looked, the whole rice paddy dike, we call them, there was nothing but black pajamas and straw hats, and they were shooting at me. I'm looking, I can see the whites of their eyes, and watch the blast from the rifles and guns, and it sounded just like we were in a popcorn popper. The rounds were hitting the aircraft, just pow, 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 just like when you're cooking popcorn and it starts to pop. Mm-hmm. That's what it sounded like. And my side caught fire. The rocket pod was on fire. And I had a man seriously shot. And then they had also ruptured my oil reservoir, which is under pressure. And the oil mixed with the blood was coating all of us in there. The other 3 of us. One guy, the one right behind me, got hit pretty hard. Right. Real hard. So we blew our pods to get the weight off, and had no alternative but to try to fly right over the guys that were shooting at us. And we made it out, but we had 0 oil pressure. That's a turbine engine. I don't know how long a turbine will run without oil, but we were going to find out, because that was not the place to sit down and look. So we got away. We got us several rice paddies over before we went in, and we were able to get another ship to come in and pick my crew up and take them to the hospital. But I was lucky; didn't get a scratch. Lucky again.
We've only got about 2.5 minutes left. There's so much more to tell after your final tour of Vietnam, a transfer to Germany that you had asked for. And I know you
I figured the only way I could keep from going back to Vietnam was to go to Germany. Right. IT interfered or transferred to Germany. So I went over and took command of the CH-54 outfit, flying cranes. The crane will actually lift 10 tons. We could carry trucks, 114 armored personnel carriers, deuce-and-a-half trucks, anything that didn't weigh over 10 tons. We could pick up and fly with. We had a people pod on that airplane that would carry 45 people, so we could hard point that under it. And of course, the engines, we had 2 Pratt & Whitney engines, each one 4,500. So you're throwing about 9,000 horsepower to the rotor head itself. And it was a fantastic helicopter made by Sikorsky, the CH-54 flying crane. So I commanded that unit until I left Germany.
Right. Your resume is so amazing, and we are running out of time. But I just briefly, April of '70 to Norfolk, Virginia, the Armed Forces Staff College. Back to Germany as an Inspector General of the 1st Armored Division in Southern Germany. To Fort Rucker, to Indiana as a professor of military science.
Yeah.
The Army rep to the Royal College of Defense Studies in London for a year in 1984, where you were expected to speak for the president.
Yeah, they would ask me questions, and I knew I shouldn't be answering them.
You were in over your head. Also, a battle staff commander at Silk Purse in England, in the European Airborne Command Post, where you were carrying the football in case of attack.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful resume, and thank you very much for your service, but we're out of time. But thank you for your service, and we're very glad you're here still.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Colonel Loveless.
Appreciate it.
Ken Loveless packed a lot into 34 years of service, and today he and his wife Sandy live in retirement in College Station, where they stay very active. We salute Colonel Ken Loveless for his service. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.